Chairman. First, I want to congratulate and thank both of you. You guys always bring us a work product, and with keeping hopefully a half-century plus string alive is something that we should do more of around here. I particularly want to thank you both for preserving the end strength of the military. I think that's the most important thing this particular piece of legislation does, is stop that erosion. And I know you had to bargain hard over OCO, and but you made the right choice in that debate. The people are more important than the equipment and the technology, and maintaining that basic level, I think, was extraordinarily important. I thank you for the raise. I think you're very right, Mr. Chairman, when you say it's less about the money, although that certainly matters to anybody, but it's about letting people know they're doing the hard work of defending all the rest of us, that we value what they do and we'll put it first. And I thank you for the reforms. I think this really is much more sweeping than the normal NDAA and some of the reforms you've put in, everything from health care to procurement to, I mean, it's all of these bills are significant. This is not a stand-in-place bill. This is really a major reform. I don't take issue with you at all in this, but I'm going to beat up on Congress a little bit at the expense of your committee. This is an authorization bill. It's not an appropriations bill. So we shouldn't kid ourselves that we've taken care of defense. We haven't. I've got a letter sitting on my desk right now from the Secretary of Defense, which I suspect every member of Congress does, that spells out what the consequences of a CR are, particularly one that now looks like it's going to be extended into April. I have the new tanker program that will be maintained at Tinker Air Force Base, KC-46. So I know what this means in terms of them getting ready to receive. They can't start and do a lot of things that they would normally be doing. We don't have any Ohio-class submarines in Oklahoma. We'd like to get a couple, but we're not sure where we'd put them. But I know what it means for that program as well. Program after program after program. And for some of my friends who railed against the omnibus last year, they've effectively supported an extension of the omnibus for another 6 months since the end of last fiscal year. That's what we're doing in the CR that we'll be entertaining next week. And so I would just use the example of your good work as something that the Congress ought to follow, because we can write all the great authorizations in the world, but if we don't appropriate, and I know how well you work with Chairman Frelinghuysen and how well our two committees have worked together over the years, this stuff mostly doesn't happen until we get the CR out of the way. Now, this is indispensable, and it's the framework, and I know, because I sit on Defense Approps, how closely Chairman Frelinghuysen has tried to match our appropriations with the authorizations that you've laid out. And that's a very important thing. It doesn't always occur around here. But until he's allowed to actually move a bill, whether it's in an omnibus or an individual defense bill across the floor, most of your good work won't be implemented. And that's something we ought to think about. It's too easy for us to punt the ball around here. And that's exactly what we've done. We be crystal clear, I certainly will vote for a CR as opposed to shutting the place down. I think that's the worst solution of all. But, we've allowed ourselves, and we could have finished this. That's what really, really upsets me. Because I know in my area, in the Labor H bill, we were like this. Most of the issues that we have in a lot of these other appropriations bills have been taken care of because they're usually fights over riders. And the reality is, with an incoming administration, a lot of those fights are, they're moot. They don't matter much anymore. Those decisions will be made. So you really got down to just getting the money matched up to the programs. And the areas that I appropriate, we're going to, if we don't do something by April, we'll miss a chance with no additional money spent to put an additional $2 billion at NIH so we could do a lot of disease research. And that's true in your programs as well. These are really important programs, and the dollars need to get there sooner rather than later so that our men and women in uniform have what they need when they need it, and that there is program continuity. So while I take your good work and enthusiastically supportive of what you've done, I think, again, I had the privilege of sitting on this committee when I first got there. It always operated extremely well and extremely professionally. You do have a great staff with you, and it's always been bipartisan. You guys have continued that tradition. But until we match up the appropriations, with your authorizations, the job is only half done. And pushing it, what I fear most of all is that we'll, having gotten to September and said it's easier to kick the appropriations bill out till after the election. And then we've decided, well, they'll go to March. And now we're being told, well, the Senate's going to take a long time. And it's fair enough. They've got to confirm all these additional people to new cabinet positions. It's not something we didn't know was going to happen. They've got a Supreme Court thing. So now we're going to go to April. You get to April, it's going to be awfully easy to say, well, let's just CR all the way through. And if we do that, we delay the implementation of a lot of the good things that you've done in this authorization bill. It just won't happen. So I just say that I'm going to raise this point again and again in every forum that I can. I know my own leadership's tired of hearing about it, but we get paid to do a job. We get paid to do it in a certain time frame. It ought to get done. And when one part of it, the appropriations part, doesn't get done in concert with the authorization part, then we've undercut a lot of what the good work you've done in authorizing things. Hopefully the example that you and your committee, both of you, have set for how you handle things becomes the standard for how we do things around here across the board and in both the appropriations and the authorization. And again, that was doable. That was doable this year, certainly in defense. If nothing else, I would have been happy to do a defense authorization bill standalone. I promise you it would have passed. It had tremendous bipartisan support, and that would have been half the appropriated budget right there in a single piece of legislation. We did that, thank goodness, for our veterans. We got their work done and their appropriations bill done, and that's going to move. We could have done that in several chunks, if not the whole thing. So hopefully we'll come back in January with a determination to make sure the authorization and the appropriations process move in concert. Now, the difficult thing for us will be, as appropriators, next year we will get to appropriate twice in a year, unless we do a CR. I'd rather appropriate twice than do a CR. But if we don't do that appropriations bill, we'll be undermining the good work you've brought before this committee and are bringing before the Congress, and that will pass in a bipartisan, strong show of support. So thank you for your work, and I'm going to keep harping at my committee, or our Congress, not my committee. They're ready to go until we do that.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just say, I completely agree with the concerns that Mr. Cole raises. CRs always damage defense, and the longer they go, the more damage they do. That's just the way it works. I'm hopeful that this authorization bill will provide a template for a quick and speedy defense appropriation bill after the first of the year. The only other thing I want to mention, Mr. Chairman, when you go overseas, even with the authorization bill, the pay raise and the in-strength help is effective. So that part does not require an appropriation bill, but the gentleman from Oklahoma is exactly right. To make all of most of this take effect, it requires the appropriation bill be signed.
And I look forward to working with you. I don't think we ought to wait around, particularly on the defense angle. We can move that, and waiting all the way to April or whatever, where the temptation is going to be to go to August, I think is a risk we should not run, particularly in this area. But the problems my friend pointed out in his remarks, again, I just remind everybody, are problems in every single agency, because all the difficulties this causes men and women in uniform in our defense establishment, the same things are caused in every other agency of government. The only one that will escape it is the Veterans Administration and military construction, because their appropriations bill is safely across the line in time, and we ought to be doing that for every single bill. But I thank my friends for their really, really excellent work. And again, I want to end on a positive. Thank you for defending the end strength of the force. It's the most important single thing, and you've stopped the bleeding, and next year maybe we can start restoring the military where I know both of you want it to be. With that, Mr. Chairman, yield back.
Thank you very much. Would the gentleman allow me to engage both of you just for a second? Just in a discussion, is it impossible for us to come to an agreement with the current administration? Have we decided not to negotiate? Does anybody, I don't know this answer. I certainly don't want to beat it up, but I'm interested in the answer.
I mean, my understanding is that your leadership in the House and Senate conferred with the President-elect, and they decided that they'd rather have a CR And then that was what was decided.
And not move this portion now.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know the conversations. My impression is the same as Adam's. The only thing I would say is I think or at least my impression is that the current administration will not allow a defense appropriation bill to be signed into law without the other appropriation bills.
That's what I
being
had heard,
agreed.
but I don't want to,
And so that's
Who
part
knows?
of the issue.
it's kind of one of these. We're going to kind of, and I'm not trying to pitch you guys against each other. That's the last thing I want to do, but I think that's a good point. Mr. Chairman, do you have any intel on that?
I wouldn't say I agree with my two colleagues, and I regret that we didn't at least get this. I mean, I'm a big believer in taking what you can get when you can get it, and not holding out, and it's my understanding that was the administration position as well. But I also add, honestly, in defense of the administration, in my view, this could have been done. We were pretty close in most of the subcommittees, particularly, and we will all view this in different ways given our partisan perspective.
Yeah.
But a lot of the knotty issues were settled by the election. They just were, because they could be let go, and we could focus on the money and matching the money with the authorizations in program after program. And I regret that we did not seize the opportunity to do it. I hope that we will next year, and I hope we don't wait around till April. There's no reason in defense for us to wait around until April. You guys have done the hard work on policy. Rodney Frelinghuysen and Peter Veslowski have done the hard work on the appropriation side. We ought to be able to marry this stuff up a lot earlier than April, in my view. Yield back.
Well, if I had been asked, I would have said, I believe it is true that the administration did not want to do that, but I think it was also true, but we didn't have an NDAA really accomplished. So it became a difficult wicket, but we've got to focus on it. And I think Chairman Cole's viewpoint, as well as both of yours, we need to find a way to get this done now. Thank you very much. Mr. McGovern.
I think